Hello and welcome back to another episode of Cyber Voices, the official podcast of the Australian Information Security Association, otherwise known as AISA. I'm your host, as always, David Willett, and it is my pleasure to have you with us as we explore the diverse voices of the Australian cyber industry. This special edition of Cyber Voices was recorded at CyberCon 2024 and is part of our series from the conference highlighting some of the thought leaders that came together to make CyberCon so special. Before we begin today's episode, just a quick reminder that CyberCon Canberra is nearly upon us. This is your opportunity to network with Australia's most influential politicians, policymakers, and business leaders in the Australian cyber industry. Also known as the Australian Cyber Conference, CyberCon Canberra takes place on the 17th to the 19th of March 2025 and sets the direction for our cyber community. Attracting over 100 leading cyber speakers and more than 1,000 delegates, this is the perfect opportunity for your team or business to be at the forefront of cybersecurity matters in Australia right now. We have some incredible keynote speakers lined up as well, including World War II Bletchley Park code-breaking saviour, Professor Sue Black of Durham University, who'll be talking about that campaign and women in cyber. Also, don't miss futurist Dr. Jordan Nguyen, who will be bringing his AI loneliness companion robot along for its first public outing. Join these two leading minds along with many others who will set the direction for Australia's cyber industry this year. Don't delay. Register to attend today at cyberconference.com.au or contact our National Events and Sponsorship Manager, Susanna Palermo, by emailing sponsorship@aisa.org.au to make sure you get the best exposure for your company. All the links are in the show notes. Now, on with Cyber Voices. Well, welcome back to Cyber Voices at CyberCon 2024. It's me, David Willett. I am here with today's co-host, Reece Corbett-Wilkins. Welcome back, Reece.
Hello, David.
And we are joined today by Jemma Davis. So Jemma is one of our many international guests here at CyberCon. And you're here with Culture Gem.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what's brought you over to Australia to come to CyberCon and what is Culture Gem?
Yeah, so I've come over on an Innovate UK delegation. So effectively, that's a UK government-sponsored trip. They reached out to cyber businesses across the UK and said, would you be interested in coming to Australia? Now, that's a market that we in Culture Gem have been trying to get into.
Of course.
It makes perfect sense to us to be here. So we put our names forward and amongst a whole myriad of cyber companies across the UK, and we were selected. So there's 9 organisations here with Innovate UK, sponsored by the UK government, to support the Australian cyber efforts.
Oh, that's incredible. And so you said to us before it's your first time to Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously your first time to an AISA CyberCon. How have you found, it's day one of the conference, how have you found it?
Everyone's really happy, which is not something we do in the UK. So that's great. Everyone's smiling. We're a bit stiff upper lip and miserable, and, we're cautious, very cautious of people approaching us. But no, I'm finding that I can make eye contact with the Australians and they are very open to having a conversation. And they're actually really supportive of what we're trying to do at Culture Gem. And it was like I had some mad foresight when I kind of set up Culture Gem, because we already use Australian voice actors in all of our training programs. So it works really nicely with your audience. And when I've been telling people this, that you can see that they're genuinely elated that we're not using horrible AI voices or American voices.
Yes.
And we are actually set up to reach you guys.
It's funny you mentioned that. I got told off in my day job for sending out training videos in response to a phishing simulation that were too American. They didn't really like it.
Yeah, we get a lot of that in the UK as well.
Yeah. Well, why the preference for Australian voices over UK?
I mean, I love you guys. I find the Australian voice so non-offensive.
There you go.
And how can you be upset by an Australian voice? I also grew up running home from school to watch Neighbours.
There it
because
is.
it was on just...
There's the truth. It comes out, yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah, big fan of Neighbours. Yeah, so I'd finish school and I think I had 10 minutes to get home from school and I would run so that I could catch Neighbours without having to watch it later on in the day. So Yeah, I find it a really relaxing voice, really, really welcoming. So yeah, when we started to develop all of our security awareness training, we intentionally selected Australian voice actors. So the guy who does all of our voice work is called Oliver, and he's based out here.
Ah, excellent. Now, obviously, you are in the culture and awareness space. So, and it's quite a busy space to be in. Why did you decide to get into this space, and what's the approach you're taking?
So I've had what you'd call a squiggly career. So I started out my career teaching adults with learning difficulties, life skills. So I would teach them how to be independent. So that gave me a really good understanding on how the brain processes work in terms of learning and the barriers that people might face with that. What I learned from that experience is it doesn't matter what I think you're going to be able to do. There are wild cards that you could never even consider out there. I then randomly moved from that sort of world, because it's famously really underpaid, into the marketing space. So then I learned how to get you to buy shoes if I wanted you to buy shoes. So influence your behaviors and get you to directly act in the way that I wanted you to act. And then I accidentally wandered into the world of cyber. Someone left the door open. I walked in. Now everyone's a bit scared to tell me to leave. So I ended up then working in incident response, because marketing, if you consider event management, for example, in the marketing space, and then incident response, it goes hand in hand. It's the same process. So I ended up in incident response and then was getting no sleep whatsoever. So I decided then, if I use my ability to teach, my ability to motivate you to buy shoes with the knowledge that I had in cyber, then I could actually make a real difference. So that's how I've ended up where I am. And then I've used all of that knowledge to do something different with training. So not to pitch us, but Culture Gem is the only existing fully accessible and inclusive training platform in the world. So we give learners the choice on how they want to learn, in what colour, in what voice. So it removes any barriers to learning. So that was really important to me because of the work that I did with adults with learning difficulties. So like in the UK, we have the Equalities Act, which says that, if somebody needs something in their employment, you have to make that reasonable adjustment. And you guys have got the Disability Discrimination Act, which says very similar things. Now, a lot of people who have barriers to learning or additional needs have this fear of putting their hand up and saying, I need something, because there's a huge percentage of them that have had poor experiences in the past by saying, I need something extra, or they fear that they're going to be passed over for opportunities or training in terms of promotions in the workplace. So we went down a path of giving you what you need in the moment without you having to ask for that. So you meet the Disability Discrimination Act whilst not having to expose yourself as having a difficulty in digesting information. So it's this why we say it's fully inclusive and accessible.
So what does that extend to when, so what specific kind of requests or needs might people have for how they receive their training, which are catered for?
Yeah, so we did a huge amount of research, and 1 in 5 Australians report to be neurodivergent. So that could mean that they have difficulty in processing information that's overly interactive because there are too many stimulus on the screen. So there's a lot of like standard e-learning things that you'll see out there require you to click through or watch a video, and they're not set up in a way where brains that work slightly differently can digest that information. So there are things like using a screen reader. So there's a sort of global framework, the WCAG, which is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines framework, that says anything that you publish on the internet must work with a screen reader. If it's video, it should have subtitles or captions so that you can access that information in a way that works for you. Realistically, e-learning as it stands today, in security awareness or in any other form, the platform it lives on has to be WCAG compliant, but the content does not have to be.
Right.
Now, in terms of when we look at the cyber aspect of that, having accessibility controls turned on a device, so a desktop computer, increases the attack surface of that device, which means then you're probably going to have to put in an IT request to say, I need to be able to use a screen reader, which forces you to breach the Disability Discrimination Act and have to ask for that reasonable adjustment, which people don't do. So they're living in a world where they're having to fit into a space that's been created for them, as opposed to having a world that works for them. So the other side of it is, and when I worked in education, we used to see a lot of this, is people having coloured filters on their screen, which helps for things like dyslexia or other visual stress disorders. So when you're in education, you probably have a diagnosis that if you need, well, I guess the idea is you have a diagnosis that says you need yellow or you need blue, but you have to have a diagnosis to know what that colour is. Now in education, they will put a plastic thing over your screen that shows that, or now you can get coloured lenses in your glasses. But when you then go out into the world of work, I mean, we've all been in offices, and I've never seen a single person with a yellow screen or a pink screen, because it just isn't available. And the cost to have those filters is unobtainable for most organizations. And also it's highlighting the fact that you need something. It's glowing on your screen, which is a really uncomfortable situation. So those are things that a small example of accessibility controls that exist in the world that we're not great at making available to people.
Can I just say, Gemma, my wife actually is a special needs teacher as well. So just hearing you tell this story is just incredible. The human science behind what you're actually doing is solving a cybersecurity issue, but connecting it deeply to the people behind the screen. So well done on your mission. Can you understand a bit more about, you obviously want to launch in Australia and elsewhere. What are some of the challenges been in kind of establishing your business, scaling your business? Can you understand that a bit more?
So, I mean, as you guys have pointed out, it's a very saturated market. And so typically an organisation that's looking for some sort of training platform are looking to tick a compliance box. And so they will buy from I refer to them as stack it high, sell it cheap. So someone that, you get your 20 minutes annual training every year and you say, yeah, we've met our compliance. That's it. To go up against those bigger boys is really, really challenging, because what they're not doing is the love and care that we give to our customers and the learners behind them. We've got 100% that's so cool feedback. And we're super proud of that, because learners are taking our training and going, "What? Oh my God, that's really cool."
That's awesome.
Which is crazy, because it's security awareness training. Like, nobody wants to be doing this.
Yeah.
The bigger boys are set up in a way where they can drop their prices exponentially, right? So they will knock their prices down 95%, and they will trample all over the people that are trying to disrupt the market. And Culture Gem is not the only training provider out there that are trying to disrupt the market. In the UK, there's a whole host of us, and we love each other so much. I've had the privilege of meeting, so JJ introduced me to you guys, right? And JJ has introduced me to so many people in Australia. And there are some disruptors in this market as well that are trying to do the right thing and trying to go up against those bigger names to actually make a difference. And if you, I don't want to just keep saying percentages, but we know that those training providers and those training programs don't work. And we know that because the amount of human-related incidents in like 2019 was something like 87%. And now we're looking at 95% 5 years on. So why are we still doing the same old thing? Like, it's getting worse, but they still have the market share. So it's time to now look at the disruptors and see what can be done.
And that's a simple question, but how do you track success? Because as you say, everybody has to do the mandated half-an-hour course. Nobody wants to do it.
Yeah.
Is it engagement? What's kind of the measure for you of this is working?
Yeah, so it is looking at cyber as a holistic approach. The completion stats are nonsense. It doesn't mean anything. Like, if I drove my car for 20 minutes every year, I am not a safe driver. And all you get from my completion of me getting from A to B is the knowledge that I achieved. I left my house and I got to point B, but you don't know how many dogs are hanging off the back of my car, how many kids have been run over. You've got no concept of any of that. You just know that I completed something. Now, the way that traditional security awareness programs are set up is that you can't fail either. So you don't even know that I made it successfully from A to B. Like, you know that I couldn't not get to B. Like, that was the only option that I could get to, because I get unlimited tries to get 80%, and it's done.
So is the point that is it a genuine reduction in incident? I'm an incident responder too. So I'm actually curious to understand how much of the incident response world you're bringing into the training modules as well.
Absolutely. So yeah, I started, like I said, I started my cyber career in incident response. And what I do is really upset the incident responders, because when you make a real difference in the behavior and the culture side of things,
They lose their job.
It's not just that. You absolutely don't lose your job, because what you get is more events, because you get people caring. And so they come to you ahead of the incident. So your job would change, but you would get more noise coming to you. So it is looking at that holistic view of security, looking at the risks of your organization, the threats that you're likely to face. There's no point in teaching people about stuff that is never going to cross their desk, or never going to hit them. So when you look at it all holistically, what you're going to see is an increase in people communicating with security. So you're going to have to change the team dynamics. You're going to have really good communicators in your team. And I can talk down about security people, because I am one of them. We're not necessarily the best in communication. The reason being that that's not what we came into the world to do. We came into the world to focus on the tech and be those people that are shut away staring at screens. But also in a job description, the desirable requirements for a security person are quite often good communication. It's not essential. It's in the like, it would be nice if you could have a conversation, but don't worry about it if you can't. So you have to then change those skills in cyber to bring in those good communications. I've worked with a whole bunch of organizations where if you've done the wrong thing, or you've even approached cyber to say, I think I've done something, or can you give me advice? The interrogation lamp is pointed firmly in their face, and they are challenged, and it's not appropriate, and it damages those relationships. So you should absolutely see an increase in communication from your workers to cyber, and you should be set up to handle those things. You should see your risk landscape changing, because you won't have to mitigate the risks that relate to the things that can be impacted by human behaviors. And you should see your occurrences of incidents coming down, the severity coming down, but the occurrences of events going up. And if you don't see the events going up, you're not winning.
It's not working. I love the fact that you're trying to solve a very immediate need, which is train your staff on how to not click on that phishing link. But what you actually get at the end is resilience. What you actually get is that connective tissue between people and executives and the response teams within organizations. So.
Yeah. And we absolutely have a different, I know I'm not supposed to be pitching and stuff, but we absolutely have a different take on.
I'm just curious to see how you're solving the bigger picture. That's really what we hear about.
Stuff.
Yeah.
So we don't agree with phishing simulations, and they're damaging the trust and the relationships between the workforce and cyber teams. They also, they activate the part of your brain that can identify patterns, and that's it. So it doesn't actually do any good. I can make a phishing simulation say whatever I want it to say. I can, if I want to show an improvement over time, I make fish number 1 like a really, really challenging one, and then fish number 5 is really, really obvious. And so then I can see, I can make the stats say whatever I want it to say. It's just nonsense. So at Culture Gem, what we've done, we call it the anti-simulation phishing program. So as opposed to you clicking on something or not clicking on something, you craft the most convincing fish that you can. So we give you a load of like subject lines, links, attachments, etc., and you put all of those together, and then we score how successful that fish would be, how sophisticated it is, and then the closing part is we tell you what you would have scammed out of that individual had you have actually sent that as a phishing. Hopefully, we're not training scammers in that, but it uses a different part of your brain, which is the creative aspect of your brain, as opposed to the thing that spots stuff. So it's much more engaging. And once you understand like the process of constructing a fish, you're much more likely to be able to identify that over, oh, does that feel like that's, would my boss send me an Amazon voucher? Other online retailers obviously exist.
Yeah. And phishing simulations really need to be done in a broader context of a broader education program.
Yeah.
I've worked in places, I'm a CISO in my day job, and it's like the 20-minute module. It's a tick in the box. Most of your regulatory requirements, whoever you have to report to, will usually audit you and look to see if you've done that at least once a quarter. Doesn't matter if you've seen any kind of significant improvement as a result of it. I mean, if you get breached, they're going to go, oh, are they doing email phishing simulations?
Right. Yeah.
But it plays a role as part of a bigger program. I do want to thank you for the story of the driving from A to B. I'm definitely going to use that in terms of, why organizations need more than just the 20-minute module. Question I had for you, though, is you've come to Australia to a big show like ACE CyberCon to really get that message across. How important conferences and events and trade shows to smaller disruptors like yourselves and the other organizations that you've come out from the UK with?
Yeah, I mean, we live in a world that's just full of noise, right? And because I was in the world of marketing, I mean, realistically, marketing is social engineering. There's no getting away from that. That is what it is. The difference is that we're reaching people on the toilet, which in social engineering, hopefully we're not, but we probably are. So there's I guess the online space is so overly saturated with messages that it becomes really difficult to make those meaningful relationships and connections. Now, everyone I've spoken to today who's come over and spoken to me about the product or talked to me about what they're aiming to get out of the conference, we've laughed and we've built a genuine connection. And I mean, I love the Australian humor. It suits me down to the ground. I'm fully up there with it. But yeah, I've made those lasting connections. People have hugged me. People have come over because I've been promoting that I've been coming over for a few weeks now. And so people are coming to the stand and they're like, oh, I'm looking for Jemma. We've spoken on LinkedIn. I've made so many great connections. And so those connections are actually, people do business with people, right? So that smiling face, that cuddle, that we're going to remember that. And I don't get that from those online conversations as much. And they're getting my passion, right? When I'm talking about what I'm doing, they can see that I'm disrupting stuff. And the word that people keep saying to me today is, oh my God, that's so innovative. And I don't get that in the UK. People don't say that. They're like, okay, how much does it cost?
Well done.
Why would I want that? But you guys are getting it. And I love that about this whole conference. I'm experiencing things that I've not experienced before. The talks have been incredible as well. Every talk I've gone to see, you've got some incredible speakers here. Really, really good.
Yeah, and it's great that you've actually been able to get out and see some of the...
Two,
okay, fair. But they must have been very good.
They were really, really good. Yeah.
Dare I ask who you saw?
So I saw JJ and Daisy.
Daisy's great. Daisy's great. Daisy's been on the show before.
Yeah, oh, so good. And then I saw the keynote with Joe earlier. That was so cool. And the fact that he was talking about communication and why that's so important as well. So I wanted to whoop and cheer when he was talking this morning because he said some really interesting stuff.
We had Joe in here earlier and we fangirled out a little bit.
Whoop and cheer.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and it's funny, the thing about marketing. So Daisy had a similar story.
Yeah.
And I've heard it from more than just yourself and Daisy. I was in marketing. Yeah. Then I went into specifically education, culture and awareness, but not directly. Daisy went in through pen testing first, right? So it's a very interesting journey.
Yeah, I think as cyber people, we don't get a lot of sleep very often. So there's something to keep us up. And I do feel like the culture behavior stuff has a tangible outcome. It might be a little bit harder to see and you need to know where you're looking. What's really sad, and I don't know so much about the Australian market or the industry here in terms of investment levels, but in the UK, say, 10% of an IT budget is spent on cyber and less than 1% is spent on the human aspect of cyber, which is terrible considering the stats we were talking about earlier about the human-related incidents increasing over time. But what I am seeing is some really, really strong voices in the space in Australia talking so passionately about it. And like I said, Joe talking about communication this morning, that's been a thread that from all of my Australian connections, it's been the human side and the communication and building those relationships. And so I wish that comes to the UK. That's going to make my life so much easier.
Well, Jemma, thank you so much. I'm thrilled to hear that you're having just the best time. It sounds like you're having a really good time.
But yes, no, I love it.
Well, enjoy the rest of the conference and thank you for lending your voice to us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Jemma.
Well, hello there, fellow podcasters. Are you looking to level up your podcast game? Well, let me tell you about This Is a Studio. This is a Studio is where we record cyber voices each and every single week. They're located at 693 High Street in Pran and Ikla Hawthorne East. They're Melbourne's go-to video podcast studio. Whether you're starting a podcast or taking your podcast to the next level, they've got everything you need, quality equipment, a professional setup, and a team that lives and breathes podcasts. And if you're like us and thinking about going live, these are the folks behind the scenes at events like the AFL Grand Final, Equitina Melbourne 2024, and of course here at CyberCon 2024 as well. Seriously, these guys really know their stuff. So, if you're ready to make your podcast shine, check them out at thisisastudio.com.au. This is a studio where Melbourne's best podcasts come to life. Thank you for listening to another episode of Cyber Voices. Our music is by Sonar Garut, our show artwork is by Studio Quarantine, and we record our show at This Is a Studio in Pran, Melbourne, part of Popplant Productions. Please make sure you follow the show on your podcast platform of choice and leave us a 5-star review. This will help others find the show. Also, please follow the association on LinkedIn and Instagram. If you want to add your voice to our ever-growing chorus of diverse cyber voices, have questions, feedback, or would like to be a sponsor, you can do so by emailing us at cybervoices@asa.org.au. That's cybervoices@aisa.org.au. Are you an ASA member? If not, you should consider joining our network of over 12,000 members across Australia. An ASA membership can open doors, build professional networks, create lifetime friendships, and offer exclusive training, events, and other perks. Become a member today by heading to our website at asa.org.au. That is all for today. I hope you will join us again next time on Cyber Voices.